Paul begins really in these verses a sort of argument to himself, a consideration of these 2 points, which are, whether I live or whether I die. Is it better for me to stay alive? Is it better for me to die? And so these next verses are really just him discussing that. And there's a kind of personal aspect with Philippians. I don't know if you've noticed it. A lot of the other letters, usually there's been some kind of crisis or something that's happened, like in Galatians, there's the problem with the Judaizers. In Corinthians, the problem with certain sins, and there's usually some problem that Paul's there to sort out. Whereas in Philippians, it's quite different, really. There's a much more personal kind of touch, and it's him just talking to the Philippians and talking about the relationship that he has with them. And so here he's saying in verse 21, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." Which again, think of Galatians 2:20, it's no longer I that live, but Christ lives. So he's saying, look, if I live, it's not me really living, it's Christ living through me. And to die is gain. So if he lives, that's good because Christ is living. If he dies, that's good also because he's going to go and be with the Lord, isn't he? So he's saying it doesn't really matter whether I live or whether I die. He says, if I live in the flesh, this is the fruit of my labour. So if I live longer, I can labour more. He's saying that this is good. If I live a lot longer, then I've got all those years that I can labour. And he doesn't mean going to a building site or something. He's talking about labouring for the gospel, isn't he? Working hard for the gospel. This is really good because it gives us an understanding of what it means to be a Christian, is that a Christian works hard with the gospel. All right, he's an apostle and all that, but surely the principle is the same, isn't it? We're supposed to work hard with the gospel, sharing Jesus Christ. And is he thinking of retiring at some point when he hits his mid-60s? Let a younger man come through, and don't want to keep anybody down. Let the younger ministries come through. I'll step to one side and spend a bit more time in my garden, or go travelling around the world. And I've worked hard all my life. I've earned my retirement. There's no concept of that at all, is there? And a lot of the older Christians you read about, people like Wesley and stuff like that. I think his last tour as he was an itinerant preacher, used to go around, of course, touring all different places all around the United Kingdom. I think his last one was when he was 87 or something like that, and he did something like 87 different places, presumably on horseback, in all weathers, most of them open air, and he kept going until he turned up his toes, So it's where I said, and listen, people say, "Oh well, when I retire, that'll be really good because I'll have more time to spend serving God." But I don't know whether that always is the case. You try and get people out to some meetings, and they're just retired or not, whether they have the time or not, you just can't get them there. But so yeah, it's this idea of like, when I've got to a certain age, I can stop doing things for God. Well, no, that's our life. If you're a Christian, that's your life, and you just continue on, don't you? Where the time to stop is when you stop breathing, and when then you can go home and be with the Lord. And so Paul is saying, this is great. If I've got more time, then I can labour more. I can see more fruit from my life because I've got all that extra time. Which says, for the King James says, "For I am in a strait." What does yours say, Matthew, for that in the highfalutin modern version?
It says, "I'm hard pressed."
Hard pressed, yeah. Perplexed is really what it means. He's saying, here's a difficult decision. I'm in a strait. I am hard pressed. I have a desire to depart and to be with Christ, he says. which is far better. Of course, it's always better to be with Christ, and far better for him. Nevertheless, to abide in the flesh is more needful for you. So now he's saying, I'm not just considering what's better for me. I'm saying, look, what's better for you, and this is the real heart of a true apostle or minister or a pastor or whatever, is not what's best for me, but what's best for the people that I've given myself to serve. You give yourself to spend and be spent for those people, and that's what Paul's saying. He's deliberating within himself. It's kind of funny reading it like this, because you're kind of looking into his mind. He's just kind of, I can imagine him also kind of almost sort of doodling it down. What shall I do? What shall I do?
I think it's a good section for setting the soul sleepers straight, for their view on
enlightness. Well, I know, but I mean for others' benefit.
Well, just that the doctrine of soul sleep, like Seventh-day Adventists would say, when you die, your soul goes into a sleep, and you're just dormant, unconscious. But Paul is saying, to live is Christ and to die gain. Okay, so there seems to be something going on straight at death. And then he says why, having a desire to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. And elsewhere, I think it's in Corinthians, he says to be absent from the body is to be at home with the Lord. So it's this idea that your soul sleeps doesn't match what Paul's saying, that he expected that as soon as he died, he would be with Christ.
So what does that bit mean when it says that when he comes again, the dead will be raised up?
Dead in Christ will rise, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was thinking about that verse as well when he was saying that. And also it talks about those who are... I agree with what you're saying. I'm just interested to know how these verses fit in, but it also says somewhere, in 1 Corinthians 11, that some, for this cause, some are weak and some have fallen asleep.
I could answer those if you want me to. Yeah? Okay, so that one's a really good one. So, the word resurrection, the Greek word is anastasis, and it means to stand up. To stand up. And so when the dead arise, it's the same sort of language, stand up, arise. The resurrection is when the soul, which is with Christ, gets its glorified body. And that's what resurrection is. Resurrection isn't about just coming back to life, it's about receiving your glorified body. And of course an example of that is Jesus. Because we know that although he died, he said that he would raise his own body.
Yes.
Tear this temple down, I think, and I will raise it in 3 days. How could he do that unless he died, his spirit went to the Lord God, and then he raised his own body up 3 days later, and that's what the resurrection is. It's the resurrection of the body.
Because he appears to Thomas in a body, doesn't it? Because he shows him the wounds in his hands and in his side.